I turn for inspiration to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the Dakas and Dakinis of the secret mantra yoga, to the heroes, heroines, empowering deities, and to all bodhisattvas, and especially my spiritual masters. May I quickly accomplish the state of Heruka, Chakrasamvara, thus becoming empowered to benefit all living beings. I turn for inspiration to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the Dakas and Dakinis of the secret mantra, heroes, heroines, empowering deities, all of the bodhisattvas, and especially my spiritual masters. May I quickly accomplish the state of Heruka, Chakrasamvara, thus becoming empowered to benefit all sentient, all living beings. I turn for inspiration to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, Dakas, Dakinis of the secret mantra, yoga, the heroes, heroines, empowering deities, all the bodhisattvas, and especially my spiritual masters. May I quickly accomplish the state of Heruka, Chakrasamvara, and thus become empowered to benefit all living beings. Okay, so whilst attending the teachings, you should see yourself as the deity. You should feel that you're in the mandala. Now, there's two things. One, I looked up the reference for, which question you asked earlier about why is Vajrasattva the crown of Heruka? And I didn't find any commentary yet, but it identified that you visualize, for example, Vajrayogini and all the other Dakinis and such as crowned by the various Buddha families. And so I would assume that in Vajrasattva crowning him is sort of as looking at, I wouldn't say the Adi Buddha, but sort of like the sort of something to that effect. I'll keep looking for more references on that, but at this point I didn't find any other than just it said that's what you do. It didn't say why. Okay. Now, so sort of mandala offering. Sa shi boki chochi me to re rapping shi ni danyam bati sange shindu mig de buwarki rokan nanda shin maju warsho yedam guru ratna mandala kam near dayami. Now, I wanted to do this a little bit differently, but I want to first start off with basically a review of the graduated path, because something that's really important with Tantra is that basically it's a personification of the graduated path. You know, I mean, all of the realizations in the graduated path, or where the whatever particular way you like to call it, are just basically given imagery personified in a tantric practice. So what does that mean? That means is that if you were to say, oh yes, I want to become enlightened, well, you really have to have something meaningful in that. It's not just sort of like, oh yes, somehow I'll be divine and blissful and such. Rather, it's like, what would it mean if I was enlightened? Well, if we come back to the idea of, for example, in Buddhism, that there is a continuity of rebirths, and in that continuity of rebirths, there is what you could say, a development of the Buddha's bodhicitta, or Siddhartha's bodhicitta. I'm going to change things just a little bit here. The change. Let me see. Replace pin. Okay, there. That's better for the recording. So there was this evolution, and what it was the Buddha in every rebirth, or Siddhartha, let's say, if it was the Bodhisattva, cultivated an ability. And over millions of rebirths, according to the traditional teachings, he finally then attained, the full enlightenment and was able to benefit sentient beings in all the varieties of ways. So when you talk about becoming enlightened, what it means is that you're developing all the qualities or the abilities that you could say intercede, but you could help sentient beings. And so to become enlightened, I mean, yes, it's to understand the clear light. Yes, it's to purify all your chakras and nervous system and such like that. But that's sort of the Dharmakaya, or Dharmakaya Sambhogakaya. But what's the manifestation? Well, the manifestation is all the qualities that you would have to help develop yourself that you've done. Let's say if you have over many rebirths, or as Buddha had done over many rebirths, or whatever, at least you understand their realization. So, for example, generally speaking, we would say the first, in the general presentation of graduated path, it would be the precious human rebirth. Well, yes, you can do all of the steps of the precious human rebirth, But what you really want is the end result, which is an incredibly big sense of potentiality. I have an unbelievably good opportunity. I mean, I've got a good rebirth, and I mean, if you really think about it, I've got a good rebirth. Things are comfortable. There aren't any wars right now, at least in the places that I'm living. Food is plentiful. Medicines are plentiful. I've got all of these incredible opportunities, just mundane. And then I have these Dharma teachings. And in one way, you could say how much more incredible than that is the fact that we are getting the Dharma teachings that are coming out of Tibet, and not that far away from when they were in Tibet. Maybe 100 years from now, you're going to have 3 or 4 generations of some Tibetans and some Westerners and such, which is good. But when you think about it, I mean, most of the Tibetans now, of course, all have cell phones. They're all very much involved in those sorts of things. And so to find a person who really is dedicated to the Dharma practice, really having profound experience, that's not so easy. I mean, not to say that you need let's say a medieval culture to be able to develop realizations, but you certainly don't need all the distractions that can come from cell phones and Facebook and all of those things. If you really are going to develop realization, be a really serious practitioner. Now, I'm not saying that we can't use our cell phones and things, but I'm just saying if we think about the precious human rebirth, well, for example, Glenn and myself both had direct opportunity to be with Trich Rinpoche, Ling Rinpoche, Sirkin Rinpoche, Song Rinpoche, all of these great masters. And then both of us have other lineages that we received from the Sakyapa, the Nyingmapa, and the Kargyupa. So, and these are from the original lamas that had been trained in Tibet. And so that's something really precious. And maybe, 50 years from now, if this YouTube video exists or something like that, you may go, oh, gee, poor me. But even then, I mean, you're still really close to the place that this came from, and from people that practice very deeply and sincerely. So what's the feeling that you would have? Oh, I can do something with myself. Excitement. Now, that's your realization. But if you exude enthusiasm about your life and about what you can do with yourself, that influences other people. So when you talk about becoming a deity and becoming enlightened, well, one of the things you're going to do is to help inspire people to have better self-esteem, take advantage of their potentiality and such. So to become enlightened means that. It doesn't mean it's sort of like I'm in some blissful state and that's all there is. No, I've got wonderful energy in myself, and I really appreciate that I've got opportunity. So when you identify with being the deity, I mean, for example, you take the lotus, sun, and moon cushion that any deity stands on. Well, the lotus starts off with its roots in the quagmire or the mud of a swamp or whatever you want to call it. I mean, we could say samsara, but because it is got its roots in that, then the stem from the lotus or from the roots can come up, and then finally above the swamp, above the quagmire, comes a beautiful flower. So that doesn't mean they often use the word transcendental. If you look at the word transcendental, it means you leave something behind. Well, in Buddhism, you'd have to call it integration. You don't transcend things. You integrate and transform. Okay, so if you don't have your roots in samsara, understanding suffering and all of the vicissitudes of samsara, how are you going to nurture that beautiful lotus, which is going to be up above the quagmire? It's going to die if it doesn't have those things. So what is that? Well, a cognition of suffering. I mean, once you've solved your own, empathy for others, and with that, then a desire to help them in some way suitable. So when you talk about the becoming Heruka, it has incredibly beautiful quality to it. It's not just sort of some sort of like, oh, I'm blissful and I'm having an orgasm and or whatever else you want to sort of identify it with. It's not like that. So the point being is that again, the graduated path is manifested in the deity. So you take the lotus, the sun and the moon, again, they represent, the sun is hot and such. That's sort of like you could call the love and compassion, which is warming to you. And then the moon doesn't have its own light. It has light that's reflected, and it's also cool. So for example, when you talk about, the wisdom of reality, well, the wisdom of reality is interdependent. So the moon would represent that. Now, there are different ways of phrasing this, the sun being something and the moon being something else, but still, the idea in this case, the moon being only has its lights because of interdependence, is an identification of the nature of reality. Nothing is independently self-existent. Also, there's something interesting that Lama Yeshe often said. He said, wisdom is cool. Now, that doesn't translate well in Spanish where I live right now, but the thing is that the actual idea, nirvana, is very refreshing, cool. What? From the heat intensity of the passions and the delusions. So in that way, when you stand in the moonlight, it's cool on your face. So that's sort of like the subtlety and the suaviness, the thing of moonlight. And then it only exists because of reflection, that's because of interdependence. So again, I mean, there are different ways of saying sun and moon, but the thing is that's one way which is meaningful. And that's what you're standing on, that you have those qualities. That's your basis. That's the foundation of the lotus, sun, and the moon, that you are nurturing yourself from having had sufferings. And it's made you become a beautiful person, the lotus. And then you have the wisdom of the warmth of the love and the coolness and the understanding of interdependence of the moon. Okay, so that's the something else. Then, okay, inspiration. Well, we have Buddha Dharma Sangha for inspiration. I mean, we often talk about refuge, and refuge means protection. But really what it is that we're inspired by the Buddha. You know, we take the Dharma teachings like medicine, and then we have the Sangha as our community. And so therefore that sort of helps us have our practice. So we're inspired by the Buddhas. You know, we put a Buddha on the crown of our head because we're inspired by that and such. So there's that. Then, of course, being careful with our karma. And within that, then, of course, you could add bodhicitta in at that point, that you're collecting karma not just for yourself, but for, you know, infinite beings. That's the basis for the idea that having bodhicitta is an infinite creator of karma. But let's first come back to this, the idea that we're more careful with our karma. Then, you know, as you mentioned earlier, dealing with delusions. You know, if you can't deal with your own delusions, how are you going to help anybody else do theirs? You know, I mean, if all you've done is sort of repress your anger, you know, and said, okay, well, you know, I'm not going to get angry like that. And I mean, as Shantideva, the great Indian said, if you don't have much ability to deal with anger, be like a piece of wood. You know, I mean, that's the most skillful thing you can do. So what would that mean? And somebody else's anger, they could say, be like a piece of wood. Not very skillful. So again, you have to think about it in terms of, okay, if I'm going to deal with my delusions, I have to work them through, you know, have a dialogue with them. You know, I've shared the story with other groups that back in about 1974 or 73, we, the sort of original Buddhist monks and nuns, Glenn wasn't involved because he's not a monk, of course, but us monks and nuns had a private audience with the Dalai Lama. And in that, then we were all sort of like twittipated, like, oh, we're with the Dalai Lama, you know, like the Pope of Buddhism and this and that. And so we all got introduced and we said what countries we were from. And then the Dalai Lama asked some nice questions. And then finally, you know, here's the Dalai Lama in front of us. And he says, no, tell me, you know, because we're all in our 20s. We're sort of the young hippies at the time. And he says, well, how do you deal with your sexual feelings? You know, and the room goes deadly silent, like, oh, you know, like God in heaven, you know, like the Dalai Lama just asked me about my sexuality and how I deal with it, you know. And then he laughed and laughed and laughed. And then he said, oh, I tell you what I do. He says, I have a dialogue. I says, I put a chair in front of me and I dialogue with my desire. So my desire says, you know, I want to have sex and I want a woman in my life. And I say, well, I'm a monk. And then they say, well, that doesn't matter. Then I say, why it does matter. And I says, I have this dialogue and it goes back and forth. And then His Holiness, he joked, he says, and sometimes I win and sometimes I lose. but here he is, he's 86 and he's still a monk. So I guess he did win in the long run. But my point being is a dialogue. So for example, I mean, if you have anger, it's good to think about it. Like, what is anger? And I'm not trying to bore you with a big Dharma discourse, but if we don't establish a foundation for becoming Heruka, it's just a fantasy and it's going to be nothing other than a power trip. I mean, you could go off and practice Kundalini yoga, get lots of power and abilities, you know, purify your nervous system and everything like that. But you become a very powerful person. You could influence people and maybe have, you know, have a lot of money or something like that, whatever you wanted to do. That's not the Bodhisattva path. That's not the Tantric path. So that's why I'm going to spend some time talking about this, because you want lots of teaching. So, hey, let's get the foundation. So coming back to then anger, okay, well, there's different things. I mean, one Shantideva says anger is very destructive. You know, with every moment of anger, you destroy millions of good karmas that you've accumulated in the past, which is one way to look at it. It's to help you identify it's not beneficial. But nowadays, there's a much more interesting sort of psychological review of it. And that's quite beneficial. So, for example, what is anger? Well, anger essentially wants a situation to be better. And then it uses a technique, anger, to try to accomplish that, which is not very skillful. So if you look at the root of your anger and say, I just want the situation to be better, then you have to say, okay, well, getting anger is going to make me upset, or give me high blood pressure, maybe I won't sleep at night, all these other things that are going to be faulty. People are going to want to avoid me. I'm going to make people upset. Am I really going to accomplish what I want? So you have a dialogue with your anger. Then having done that, then you turn around and say, okay, well, I need more skillful technique. Well, then you say, okay, well, one really interesting thing is if somebody's angry at you, they just want to be happy. And they're using anger as a technique to try to accomplish that. And it completely changes. Like, instead of flipping into defensiveness, like, no, I didn't do that, and you don't understand me. No, you think, whoa, this person's just really unhappy. And they're suffering, they're unhappy, and they want to be happy, and they're thinking anger will solve the problem. Okay, so then actually you can have a really actually a heartfelt compassion for them, and you really understand how much we want to be happy and not like to suffer. As much as you really understand it in yourself, watching the things that you do to try to pursue happiness. I mean, catch yourself when you do something that's sort of completely, like, I wouldn't say inappropriate, but it's completely like, I mean, so self-gratifying. This is sort of make yourself happy, think, whoa, look at me, look how, I wouldn't say pathetic, but it's sort of like how, low, like how incredible we are to just have happiness. And then when you have that in yourself and you see somebody else, trying to get angry or using anger, you think, whoa, you're just like me. I can love you, Now, that doesn't mean that's what you do. You practice patience and you do other things, but you're understanding. You've had a dialogue with your own anger, and therefore when somebody else is angry, you can flip into your own dialogue, understand them, and even have compassion for them, have love for them, or at least you can have some patience for them, whatever might be necessary. And then, I mean, all the other delusions that we have, whether it's competitiveness or jealousy or, attachment, all of those different ones, again, you dialogue with them. What that means is that when you are enlightened or more enlightened, a higher level bodhisattva, when someone's talking to you, you can say, whoa, I understand you because, hey, I had to deal with that. And even if I didn't have a big problem with that particular delusion, I can understand it caused a lot of pain. So that's part of being Heruka Chakrasamvara. Like, I mean, your consciousness is omniscient. It goes out and touches sentient beings. So how are you going to touch sentient beings? Just say, oh, please be happy. Oh, please be happy. No, you're going to try to help them. When you hear about the Tara, when she was the Yeshi Dawa, it said that every morning before she had breakfast, her consciousness could expand and I think liberate, 10,000 people from the delusions. And then she'd have breakfast, and then after breakfast, she'd again go into her meditation, expand her consciousness, and again liberate 10,000 sentient beings from their problems. That's why she's called the liberator, the mother of all sentient beings. So, I mean, if we have that in the teachings, what's it mean for us? Now, I'm not saying that we need to somehow have some crazy idea about ourselves, but if we don't initially know how to deal with our own delusions skillfully, flexibly, how the heck are we going to help anybody else when we so become enlightened, other than if it's just our own escape into some blissful state like the Pure Land? Anyway, so that's delusions. Then part of that also is understanding the nature of your sense of self. That how you understand your sense of self. And I'm not sure, I haven't chatted with Glenn for a long time about this, but I start to use the word about sense of self. So instead of saying self, you say sense of self, because, for example, if you use the word ego, it's really the worst one ever. I mean, even to say like, oh, the Buddha has an enlightened ego, it makes you want to vomit. I mean, it's just like an inappropriate thing to ever say. But if you said the sense of, like, you can say the sense of self. So my sense of self is clouded by delusions. The sense of self of a Buddha is enlightened, but it's still the same sense of self. You can take that from being a deluded sense of self to being an enlightened sense of self. Okay, so there's a progression, or it's not like you have to lose something. So again, I mean, the idea of being egoless, really inappropriate translation. I mean, you could say being not being egocentric, which is an adjective, but the noun or the central thing is my sense of self is not egocentric, or my sense of self has lots of wisdom. So I think just in the terms of referring to yourself, to do it that way, much more beneficial than, well, you could say self, but if you took your sense of self right at this moment, it's the evening time, it's Monday night, in Ireland or whatever, okay, then what did I have for breakfast today? And how did my day go? And did I do this and do that? Was it cloudy and rainy? All of those things created your sense of yourself that you have right now. They were factors that created who you were, okay? But that's not a permanent thing. So, new factors will come along. I mean, tonight when you finally get into bed and go, oh, I'm so tired, then your sense of self is going to feel released. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, then your sense of self has something else. So I think it's very appropriate. So in dealing with delusions, one important factor is understanding your sense of self as not being an inherently independently self-existent thing. My sense of self is interdependent. So that also takes away some of the intensity of the delusions we have. Then, of course, we move to bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is incredible, But again, when you talk of bodhicitta, Trijang Rinpoche, who did receive my Heruka Chakrasamvara initiations and my Vajrayana initiations and things, he said in a private audience with me, he said, when you talk about bodhicitta, the first thing you do is think about people you love. When as years went by, I started to understand a little bit, because if you come back to karma, there are 4 principal rules of karma. Karma is definite, karma increases. If you don't do it, don't expect the result. And if you do nothing, it will finally result. Okay, so karma is definite. Okay, now you sit there and say, oh, for the benefit of all sentient beings. I mean, I don't know, just whoever's out there. Okay, what's the feeling you have? Because that's part of karma. You didn't create much karma. So you say, okay, so bring to mind, for example, especially a child, maybe you have a niece or a nephew or something like that, or just some children, and then check up your feeling towards them. Right? My feeling would be, I want this child to grow up well. I don't want them to have any traumas. I want them to get a good education. I want them to be healthy. I want them to be, all those things. That feeling that you have for a child is really a very, very good feeling for bodhicitta. So allow yourself to bring to mind that. Now, something that happens for a lot of people now is their pet. So let's say you have a pet dog or a pet cat, and I mean, we tend to love them a lot, we do an awful lot for them. So then think of I would like to offer a more enlightened relationship to my pet dog, and then my pet dog can take a rebirth as a human. If I show them lots of love, they're going to like human beings. So when they go into the bardo, they might actually get connected with a mother and a father, human being mother and father, and get a human rebirth because I've given them love. No, not in some extreme way, like you let them sit at the table and eat food or something silly like that. But no, just your affection and love. And then, of course, as Lama Zopa always says, mantras in the ears of dogs that he ever gets close to one, So again, no, the point being is bring to mind something we have a very nice feeling for, and then say, I would like to offer a more enlightened relationship. And then from that, because you've got a feeling, you actually touched love with good intentions, then expand it to maybe family, and if you can, then to all sentient beings. But for sure, when you get to all sentient beings, you've lost a lot of the feeling. Sentient beings are too weird, there's too many of them. So very important to sort of start off and really try to maintain a feeling. And then that makes you a really nice person. When people meet you, they say, oh, that person's so friendly, I like them. And even if some person's a major jerk, some really inappropriate person, you don't need to be the doormat for them, but if you're friendly to them, maybe one day they might come to you and say, gee, I'm having a hell of a time. Everybody hates me, this and that, but because you've been friendly to them, they've come to you to ask for advice. That's bodhicitta. And that's because you had a consistency in yourself about the quality of who you are. Okay. So So there, bodhicitta is incredible. And of course, why it's called a, an infinite mind is because it's on the basis of karma for all sentient beings. So, often we create karma for one or two, like maybe between the two of you, you work together to make money to support the household. So you could say, oh, I'm working for us, to have a good life. Well, it's karma for two. Okay. Then if you can maybe say, maybe you have some money you give to some family member or something because they're rather poor, then you're doing karma for 3 or 4. See what I mean? So that's why bodhicitta is really, really important, because it has this larger context for the benefit of all sentient beings. And then what are you offering? Well, I mean, if you could just give everybody $1 million, wouldn't that be great? But that's not actually going to guarantee they're going to be happy or successful. Like try to give them wisdom to deal with their delusions. How did you get that? Because you practiced. You learned how to deal with your own delusions. Okay, so becoming Heruka has so much beautiful quality, and that's something that's really important to bring to mind. Now, something that I don't think any Tibetan Lama has ever talked about, but I'd like to bring up is, for example, when you think of, for example, that you are Heruka Chakrasamvara, and from my point of view, you could be on either side of the fence. What I mean is, if you're a woman, you could be Vajravarahi in the Heruka mandala, or you could be Heruka in that, or whatever. I mean, just whatever works for you. It doesn't really matter. But my point is this: is that when you think of I'm in union with somebody, okay, now you can take your own just sort of mundane relationship that you have, and I don't mean it's mundane, but I mean it's just like the relationship you have, boy and girl. Okay, that like thing is like what you do is you see something in that person, and it is our projection. I mean, isn't it true that when we fall in love with a projection, and then 6 months later we find out what the person's really like. That's reality. Okay, but the point is there is a projection or seeing something that somebody else has. So now I want you to put yourself, and again, if you're a woman, put yourself on the female side. If you're a guy, put yourself on the Heruka side. It really doesn't matter. But then saying, okay, I'm in union with an enlightened woman. And what would that be like for me? I mean, shit, it'd be embarrassing as hell because I've got so many delusions, You see what I mean? I mean, but that's the point is that, or let's say if you're a woman and you've got a man, it's not like he's some jock or, some stupid, movie star or something like that. No, this is a Buddha. How would I feel if I was in union with that person? That's something I don't think the Tibetan Lamas talk about, but you've got to think about it. This is an evolution for us. And so it's not just that, having sex with anybody is going to be meaningful. No, I mean, we all know that. I mean, we're all mature enough that maybe we've had sex many times or whatever with different people. And the thing is that in doing that, what was the first thing that attracted us? Some idea that maybe they were somebody good or helpful, or they give me security, or that they're attractive and they're pretty and I like to be with pretty people. I don't know, whatever our particular delusions are. But we're practicing Tantra, and we're in a center of a mandala of enlightenment. And so when you put yourself in union with Heruka Vajrayogini, however you want to see it, you have to think, okay, well, this is an enlightened being I'm in union with. Like, whoa, and I mean, I guarantee that you'd feel a little bit queasy about it because, we have this sort of rather mundane mind. But then we have to say, no, okay, no, hey, I am, developing my Buddha nature, or my tantric abilities for the benefit of sentient beings. And so therefore then you're in union, and then it becomes very meaningful. I mean, again, you have to think of it like the whole thing of, if there was somebody that was really, really special for you, and why? Well, because they had some beautiful qualities that you really, really liked. Okay, and so you court them, however it would be, and then finally you're with them and you're making love. That's an incredible fulfillment. Now, it is mundane, but the thing is, it's still very realistic when you talk about being Heruka Vajrayogini in the middle of a big mandala. So that's something that's, again, a personification of incredible fulfillment. Okay. Anyway, so we have the graduated path that's manifested in being Heruka Vajrayogini, Heruka Chakrasamvara and Vajrayogini. It's meaningful. My practice and my abilities that I have are what I exude into the benefit of all sentient beings. And then the techniques of Heruka Chakrasamvara help me get there much quickly. And again, if we go back to what some of the Tibetan Lamas gave as examples of this, they said, like Geshe Darga used the example. He says, like, you know, if you wanted to kill well, let's say a yak, because they're Tibetan, okay, you know, then you could beat it to death, or you could just cut its throat. And he says that's the difference between sutra and tantra. But as for me, I think that's the most god-awful example that I've ever heard. Whereas if you think of it as like, I'm sick, I get a massage. Okay, it makes me feel a little better. But if I had acupuncture, it's much more specific to the organs that are ill, and so therefore I would be healed much quicker. That's a perfect example of the graduated path is like a massage for our sense of self. You know, we massage ourselves. Hey, we get better self-esteem, perfect human rebirth. We're more careful about our karma. We have this big inspiration, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Dhaka Dakinis. That's our refuge. We're working on our delusions, you know, learning how to better deal with them. It's all a nice massage, you know. And then bodhicitta is like, wow, it's the hitting the best pleasure points, you know. Okay, that if you got acupuncture, you could heal the illnesses you have are so much faster because it goes directly to the nerve, to the organ that's causing the problem and such like that. So that's the difference between sutra and tantra. They're both very complementary, but really tantra is much more profound. And that's why you practice Heruka Chakrasamvara, is because of the profundity of it and what it can offer for you, okay? So for the opening class tonight, what I wanted to cover was just basically, okay, you're interested in Heruka Chakrasamvara. What mindset do you have? You know, what are you thinking about? Like, well, what's the goal that you want? You know, now I know that sometimes we just move with incredible faith. Like, you know, I mean, I have to, when I think of myself, I was 20 years old when I met all these great Tibetan Lamas, and I don't know quite what happened, but I just had this lot of faith in what was going on, and I just did what I was supposed to do, you know. And, you know, I mean, obviously I had my intelligence, but I really didn't. I sometimes wonder, like, wow, I mean, you know, just on personally, like I became a monk and I did all these retreats, and then I did finally a 3-year retreat. It's all based on faith, really. So, okay, but what was my goal? You know, and I have to say, well, I had a variety of things, you know. I mean, I was a little bit unhappy with my life. I didn't know what the meaning of life was and things like that. So those are my sort of the criteria for my Dharma practice. You know, because I had good teachings, I improved on that and gave myself a better motivation for why I'm practicing. So I emphasize, or don't emphasize, I'd say, look at yourself, like, why the heck did you get interested in Buddhism? Why did you get interested in Tantra? You know, maybe just because you want to be happy. I mean, that's a very realistic motivation. You know, I like to be happy. I like to be more realized. But again, it's all about me, nothing much about all sentient beings. But then we take the teachings and we slowly learn that. And then the big one is, of course, is that you should use your own motivations for being able to understand what other people are into. You know, I mean, it's not like that we discard the things that we had initially for our interest in practicing Buddhism or spirituality, you know, but rather they're the fuel, they're the mud that nourishes the stem that creates the beautiful lotus. So really appreciating the things that were our original motivation, just like, you know, a boyfriend or a girlfriend dumped me, and I mean, damn it, I hate them, you know, and I want to do something with myself. So I went up and practiced meditation and things like that. It's a very realistic motivation, you know, or whatever it might have been. Point being, anyway, is that it's good to use all the different facets of who we are. And by getting teachings, we will improve our motivation and we can arrive at a better place, which then comes to what does it really mean to be Heruka or Vajrayogini? And that's what we're into, okay? So that's the first thing I really wanted to talk about, but I do want to open it up. So you can say that was sort of the first official presentation. Now, having done that though, I want to open it up to questions and chatting about things. So if you have something that's particularly interesting or whatever, we can talk about that if you'd like, please.
Well, thank you so much, first of all. It was already mind-blowing.
I'm blown away, and especially with the aspect of integration, because yeah, the Tantra to me, it's also that's why I'm so engaged in and also motivated to deepen this path, because I see the both the practical aspect of the enlightenment, getting enlightened, to deepen this connection with me being the better version of myself, but also steeped in the mud. It's not being somewhere else just to be for the sake of being somewhere higher, better, but how am I going through the challenges of my daily life? Am I working my inner demons, my limitations, and also my understanding of how to work with the reality, also from the level of the Tantra, the enlightenment, but not losing the grip in this reality, because this is the only way how I see I can be of help to others. So I like this honesty, this practicality of the enlightenment that you're introducing, Samajampa. So thank you.
Sure.
So,
questions?
Actually, I would have a question about the consecration of the organs of the Chakrasamvara and Vajrayogini, because this aspect of meditation seems to be optional, and Lama Glenn is emphasizing always the importance of doing that before getting into union. And visualizing the Herukas, the whole transformation from the hum into the syllable ba, and then and also from the female side, of course, from the a, and then to the da. And what's the symbolism of it? Whether it's only about transform, I mean, only. Is it the purpose of seeing the organs on the pure level, or there is also some other symbolic meaning? How important is it? Because sometimes for me it's more intuitive to get already in union, but maybe I should be patient to be.
I have a student in Mexico here that, I said, try to see yourself as a deity. And she said to me, she says, it completely ruins having sex. So I won't comment about Glenn's thing. I mean, and one way, yes, it was sanctifying your sexual organs is what you're talking about, basically. I would think that there's a lot more of go way back before that. In fact, I wouldn't even consider worrying about it. Get your headspace right. You have, coming into the whole thing of that I'm trying to become a more enlightened person. I'm trying to be a benefit. I'm trying to be more in harmony with reality as being much more important. I mean, not worrying whether your vagina or your penis is turned in from a hum to a vajra or to a lotus or whatever. I mean, that's just, I don't see that as being very beneficial. And I'm not contradicting Glenn. I think at a later date, that would be something worthwhile. But initially, just for us as beginners, that just having the right headspace for having sex, okay? Now, one thing, I mean, I'll give you a presentation which I'd like you to reflect on, okay? Okay, because the big basis of Tantra is the union of bliss and voidness, okay? So something that I think that we often miss is that we have to start to build up an association of when I feel blissful about something, I am actually empty of any self-existence. But you need to look at it in two ways. You don't go to the ultimate. The ultimate is just open like the space of the sky, and that then is very blissful. Okay, we understand that. But on a relative level, relative perspective, things are still appearing. You're sitting in your room and you're sitting on a chair and there's air around you and there's what's happening in the weather outside. That's all a vast ocean of interdependence, okay? Now, if you were to sit in the chair that you're in right now and you say, oh, I feel really good, then you just sort of, like you say, open your mind to saying empty of any self-existence. Now, again, relative view, all this phenomena is interdependent. Okay, so you start to put together the mind of, oh, I just had a really blissful feeling, not self-existent. Because what normally would happen, let's use chocolate cake. I mean, Lama Yeshe is great with chocolate cake. So you'd say, okay, you take a piece of chocolate cake or a really good brownie or something like that, and you bite into it and you go, whoa, that's so nice, like, I mean, if you got a really good one, it's still soft and it's maybe a little bit warm and things like that. Okay, the normal mind goes, whoa, that was delicious. I want another bite, or I want another piece of brownie. Okay, that's samsara. Now, what you need to do is you go like, wow, that was really great. And then, I mean, it's a little bit mechanical, but you need to say, okay, hey, that's the, the sugar and the chocolate and my tongue and my mouth and my saliva, and like, wow. And again, it's just like open, no independent self-existence. That's a ocean of interdependence, and this happens to be very blissful. Now, you'd start doing that with just that, or maybe again, you sit in a chair, or you drink some cold water, or someone touches your face, or like, I mean, because you're a couple and someone kisses you on the cheek, you go, oh, that's so sweet, I love my partner, okay, that would be then, that's the sort of key to samsara, in the sense that you just over-identify the object. What you want your mind to go into is open, empty of any independent self-existence. And you need to train yourself in that. Train yourself with eating a piece of chocolate cake, and then train yourself when you're not thinking about it, and then suddenly you've got maybe a really nice, I don't know, drink in your hand, and you take a sip and you go, whoa, that was nice. Then that's sort of like, I want another one. Okay, no. All the vast ocean of interdependence, down to the cells of my body are interdependent. There's a whole series of meditations which I teach, which should be, for example, let's say right now we're sitting in this room. Okay, have you ever considered that actually you're no different than a fish in an aquarium? The medium we're in is the air. You move your hands around, you can feel the air. Well, there's no gaps in that. There's no place that there's not that air, because if there was, then if you were in that, you'd die, because you're not being sustained. So you're no different right now than you're sitting in the bottom of a swimming pool, and there's all this water around you, and it's touching all sides of your body, okay? But it's not just that. Then you have to take a breath, and that's going inside of you. And literally every cell of your body needs that oxygen you just breathed, okay? And so again, now you're like a sponge in the ocean, like you're completely like immersed, penetrated, and you're being fueled and you're given life by that. That's a really good meditation for being interdependent. And it means also empty of any self-existence, but you're a little bit focusing on interdependence. And then you just bring to mind, okay, also empty of any self-existence. So just sitting there breathing, you can do that all the time. The interdependent thing. Then you could add in bodhicitta into that. Like in your heart, there's like, hey, may everybody have happiness and cause of happiness. May I and everybody have happiness and cause of happiness. It's like a perfume, and again, like if you burn a stick of incense in the room, the perfume just naturally goes whatever part of the room and makes the room nicer. That's what you want to be. You're interdependent. There's no independent self-existence of you whatsoever. Every part of you is interdependent. Your body was interdependent with mom and dad. Your ability to understand my English is the fact that they talk to you in English, supposedly, or whatever, Then you learn how to speak better because you went to school. You're interdependent with education. You're interdependent with the food you've been eating because you're still alive. Then, all the good feelings you have, love, joy, affection. You need somebody in your life. It's not like you're walking down the sidewalk and suddenly you're full of love. No, you have to meet somebody. So you're interdependent in all the emotions you have. There's not one, you could say, atom of independent self-existence in you. You are absolutely interdependent. So come back to this breathing, and I'm interdependent. Okay, I'm immersed in an ocean of atmosphere. Just move your hands and you can feel the air around you. You start to build that consciousness. I'm immersed. Take a breath. I'm interdependent. Now then, put a little bliss in that. Just sort of say, whoa, and actually one very nice bliss is I'm of benefit. That's a beautiful feeling. It says bodhicitta, but I am interdependent and I'm of some benefit. I'm not supreme benefit. I'm not the Buddha, but hey, I'm of some benefit. I have good intentions. That's happiness. Okay. So that sort of really validates your whole Dharma practice. As you say, you're a tantric bodhisattva. Then, okay, now you're going to start moving to bliss. Okay. So eating a piece of chocolate cake, blissful. So you start making yourself familiar with, oh, bliss is interdependence. Bliss is empty of any self-existence. Okay. Now then, you're a partner, a relationship. Okay, well, your partner's a Dharma practitioner, you are. So when they touch you, whoa, that's the Dharma, that's thing. So now you're starting to get your mind into, like you say, all of the right sort of concepts and things like that. Then if you had that and you had sex, you could just enjoy your sex massively. And you don't have to think about, oh, did I turn my vagina into a lotus, or did my penis become a blue Vajra, you know, with a top marked with pay? I mean, that's bullshit, you know. I mean, I'm sorry, you know, you just enjoy it. Now, the real point of all of that, though, is that your central channel. Now, your central channel goes from the tip of your penis, it's your urethra, goes down your penis, down to the pelvic floor, and comes up inside. For a woman, and this is based strictly on Lama Yeshe, and other lamas might have other commentaries, for a woman, it's the top of her vagina. And it's just before it enters into the uterus, okay? And that's considered the top nerve, okay? So, and I mean, there's some commentary about, you know, the most supreme climax for a woman is at that point of her body. But anyway, that's the side point. But when you visualize yourself having union and having bliss, okay, why you block the two of them is so that you don't, you know, orgasm. And I mean, even Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's an incredibly conservative Lama, said, you want to get yourself excited all the way to the point, but not climaxing. Okay, so that's something to take into consideration. But again, don't ruin your sex life by trying to make it too analytical or too mechanical or too tantric. You know, you being blissful, you being happy, you not having a sense of independent self-existence, you having bodhicitta, those are things, validating those. So for example, the next time you make love, if you think, I'm making love with the bodhisattva, whoa, you know, please, you know, go at it. You know, I mean, that's a really good affirmation, you know. I mean, this is Tantra, okay, so we can drop sort of the more mundane side of things, but the thing is that, so that now you're validating and you're putting yourself into a really good feeling. Now, in the long run, and why I went through all this sort of long explanation was simply is that what you want is to be able to energize your central channel. So for example, if you were into tumo meditations or psychic heat, whatever, you know, kundalini, then you want to be able to draw the energy from, you know, I mean, again, there's different visualizations, but for you as a man or for you as a woman, you go to the tip of your central channel, which for a male is the top of the penis, for the female is the top of the vagina. Okay, now in regards to that, you don't need an erection, you don't need to have anything like that. But you put yourself into the urethra, and then for the man, and you slowly walk it back down and down to the pelvic floor, and you slowly walk it up to your abdomen, and then you try to develop tumo. For the woman, same thing, but she goes in the opposite direction, obviously. Okay, so this consecration of organs, yeah, down the road, you know, visualization and such, yeah, go for it. But I think there's a big preliminary to that, which goes way back earlier than all of that, okay? And I would like to see you do that for 6 months so that you start to really have that sense about yourself. You know, like, hey, I'm a Tantra Bodhisattva. I have bodhicitta. I am not independently self-existent. I am in a vast ocean of interdependence. May I make the world a better place. And that's blissful. And that's going to just, like, think though, Domo Lencher, Domo, anyway, one Tibetan Lama, Glenn Mullen and I were actually attending that class together. It was about the self-initiation of Yamantaka. He said very clearly, he said that what makes a difference between normal desire and the practice of Tantra is, he said, it's like two pieces, like if you had a tree and two branches were touching each other. And because of the wind, one branch rubbed against the other branch. Okay, and if it did it enough, there would then become a fire. And then both the branches are burned. So the fire destroys it. So what you have is that you have the object of a desire, and then you have the sense organ that's receiving that and things like such like that. But so that's the bliss. But then you have the understanding of the nature of reality. That's the voidness. And that's the two sticks that rub together. So the bliss isn't about self-gratification. The bliss is putting me more and more, I'm open, I'm empty of any inherent self-existence. And then you have then you have the two of them are burned, you know. So in the Lama Chopa, in the verses of the Sok, it says, you know, that although the bliss arises from desire, it's unsullied. I think it's this is a lotus born out of mud. Although the bliss is born from desire, it's unsullied by its contaminants. May I have the true experience of the bliss and voidness. So, okay, so those are the things you want to really focus on as an initial practitioner. So I give you 3 or 4 months to do that. Start to do that every day. Next time you drink your orange juice, empty of any inherent self-existence. Next time you kiss each other, again, you don't want to ruin the kiss by being too intellectual about it, but the thing is, say, I just got kissed by a bodhisattva. It's a nice, simple version of it. And then later on, you can say, whoa, if I didn't get kissed, I wouldn't have this bliss, interdependence. Thank you so much for the blissful kiss. Okay, so there's some food for thought, and that's the rest of your life. You're going to work on that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So
We all-
precious. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
Okay. Other questions?
You have?
I think no, not at that moment.
So I will have another one if I can.
Sure.
So the moment of a mantra recitation in sadhana, we are in union, and now we are doing layering. So sometimes I have 1 or 2 hours of mantra, and for me, natural is to feel really love coming from my heart and touching all beings, and that's and you're right that sometimes it's when it's too vast, like beings in general, the feeling might be fading. So I have to connect with really some beings that I feel right now connection to, those that are hurting or those that hurt others. And then I feel even bigger love or compassion, and then I have the sense of the Chakrasamvara and in union we are sending the love around. But maybe there is other more meaningful visualization. We've been introduced to also sending the small Chakrasamvaras everywhere and spreading bliss, or having the wheel of fire. So there are certain visualization, but for some reason this one is the closest to me, but maybe I can enhance or build up the visualization more while mantra phase.
Okay, so the essence of your question is that when I'm doing mantras, I sometimes lose the sense of what it's about.
No, for me, it's most natural to just be sending like feeling of compassion and love. Is there something else that I can do?
Well, I could quote Trungpa Rinpoche on that one. And again, I don't know if this applies completely to your question, but he said we can have idiot compassion or we can have enlightened compassion. And idiot compassion is not very beneficial. In fact, it makes the situations worse. Enlightened compassion is beneficial. So if you have a base feeling of, may everybody have happiness and the cause of happiness, very good. That's the base feeling. But when it actually touches a sentient being, maybe it has to be adjusted a little bit for each sentient being. So what you're doing is you're establishing very well a base feeling. How it's going to manifest in particular situations might be a little different. So I'm not contradicting what you're saying. I'm just saying is that maybe you need to think of it, okay, like that's the warmth, and may everybody have happiness, cause of happiness. And then maybe just again for the fun of it, you could say then focus on one person that maybe is at work or a client that you have or something like that. And then you just feel that like that love turns into something that they have better self-esteem. And you see them full of self-esteem. And actually what will happen is that person, the next time you with them, whether you're in a client situation or something, they're going to say, whoa, you know, like even if they don't say it, they're going to feel that you see something good about them. Yeah, I have something that happened to me that was very interesting. I had many gurus, you know, and I mean, they all were wonderful people, and I think they all cared for me. But when I actually touched my feeling of love, this Geshe Rapton, and he was one of my first gurus. He was Lama Yeshe's first, you know, his main guru. Geshe Rapton gave me my ordination as a monk, and then later gave me teachings and stuff. But what I realized later on was that he actually loved me. You know, I mean, he actually really had love for me. I mean, maybe it was sort of a paternal thing that he never had a child. So here he has, you know, cute little Jampa, a Canadian boy in front of him or something like that. But the thing is, he had that feeling for me and he projected that on me. And because of that, I can say, I, 40 years later, can touch that feeling because he had it on me. Now reverse that. Okay. When you have a client in front of you, how do you see that person? Okay. So you have this base, I have love and compassion for all sentient beings. May everybody have happiness, cause of happiness. But like when you're looking at this person and saying, well, this person they really have low self-esteem, you know, they need that. No, I can say that, but that just maybe identifies a problem. It's like pushing a wound, doesn't help them. I've got to see them as being, you know, again, it's like you'd say your abilities to sort of see something really positive about somebody and believe that they have that. Then you're really putting something into them and they will respond by that. Maybe they don't respond right away, but maybe 5 years later they say, gee, you know, you always were so nice to me, you know, and you believed in me. And then you can say, whoa, that was the emanation of my light for that person. And so with every person, whether you're just sending them peace or you're sending them compassion or whether you're sending them equanimity, whatever it happens to be that you want to send them, that's your flexibility. If you really think about it, your practice of Heruka Vajrayogini is basically the most creative thing that you could ever do yourself. You know, you can be creative and paint a picture, you could be creative and, I don't know, make a sculpture, you could create and make a beautiful garden. If all those things are external, working on yourself to be Heruka Vajrayogini, that's the ultimate creativity. But don't focus on it yourself because that's getting egocentric. Do it for the benefit of others you love.
Oh, beautiful.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jampa.
Okay, so that's 1 hour. That's what I'm willing to do right now. So that concludes for today. But we need to close with some dedications. So if we go to the Heruka practice and we go right down to the end of it, I have to pull it up on my screen. Just a sec, I'm sorry, my computer is glitching me. Okay. Okay, I don't see it right off the bat, sorry. I'm looking for the dedication prayers in the Sedona.
Page 19.
Page 19. Oh, okay, thank you. There we go. Dedication. Okay, so we're on page 19. Thank you very much. We'll do it in English because I think it's more beneficial because we actually understand what we're saying. And so together out loud, through the positive energy of this practice, may I quickly attain the enlightenment and feel of supreme bliss, and thus may I help all living beings without exception to this very state of enlightenment. May precious Bodhicitta, not yet aroused, now arose, already have some may it grow from higher to higher. Okay, so there you go, guys. That concludes the class for today. Should be fine for next week. Do remember this is a long-term process, so can't promise every week I'm available, but next week should be just fine. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Samantha.
Okay, and now things for homework. What I'd like you to do is just a very mundane thing. One, breathe, feel that you're immersed in the ocean of atmosphere, you know, and wave your arms around and sort of get a real sense of like, I'm no different than a fish in the ocean, although my medium is more thin. Okay, that just gives you a sense of interdependence. Then take a breath and feel, hey, every cell of my body needs that oxygen to be alive. If some part of my body doesn't get that air, it's going to die. So then you sort of have both external and internal complete interdependence, open, empty of any self-existence. So do that a little bit, and then also on occasion just quietly when you're drinking some tea that really is tasty, or if you're eating a chocolate cake or a nice cookie, just sort of don't think, "Ooh, I want another of that cookie." Then that's samsara. I think, whoa, blissful voidness. Okay, that's your homework.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The practice of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so take good care, big hugs, and see you in a week.
Have
Thank
a
you
good
so much.
rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.